Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of Now in the World is Ohio State going to replace this guy? I'm Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyeHuddle.com and also the Buckeye Weekly podcast, continuing our series on how the Buckeyes are going to replace their departed starters from the 2024 season. And with spring practice fast approaching, we are going to be running through these because there's no time like the present to talk about the past and also the future. And we just wrapped up a show yesterday on the running backs. Today, we're going to be talking about the defensive ends, and we're pairing them together, both Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, because if we just talk about one, it's hard to talk about one without talking about the other. But also, if we just talk about one, the next show is going to be the exact same when talking about the other. So we're going to lump them in here and go through all of this because, again, they came to Ohio State together as part of the 2021 class. They were, it's been Jack and JT forever, and they'll be that way in this show as well. 2 5-star defensive ends in the 2021 class. JT Tuimoloau broke into the starting lineup as a true sophomore. Actually had a couple of spot starts as a true freshman in 2021. And then Sawyer in 2022, when Jim Knowles came to Columbus, was put in that Jack role, which didn't end up working for Sawyer, but they got him on the field quite a bit. And eventually, however, they figured out that they need Jack Sawyer as a defensive end rushing the passer. And that's where he moved back to, went back home, essentially. And those two, for the past 2 years, have been the edges, the pass rushing defensive end duo for the Buckeyes. And have been very good. Not good enough for some. There's no Chase Young. They're not. Neither of them are Bosa's, but they never should have been expected to be. Even though they were both 5-star guys, one guy, and depending on which recruiting ranking you looked at, they were both like the number 1 defensive end in the class. But the guys that they're being compared to are special all-time greats. Now, these two guys ended up being all-time greats in their own right. They walked out of Ohio State with national championships, and that's something that they will always be remembered for. When you look, JT Tuimoloau finished his career with 24 sacks. Jack Sawyer finished his career with 23 sacks. Tuimoloau, 44 tackles for loss in his career. Jack Sawyer, 28.5 tackles for loss in his career. Sawyer, of course, will always be remembered the scoop and score against Texas to just basically clinch the game, win it 28-14. One of the greatest plays, arguably the greatest individual play in Ohio State football history, certainly on a list of, 2 or 3 with the Holy Buckeye, and I don't know what else you're going to put up there, but one of the greatest plays in Ohio State history. Tuimoloau, meanwhile, in 2022, had arguably the greatest individual performance in a game for a Buckeye defender ever. That was, of course, I don't even need to tell you what game it was. You know what it was. It was the Penn State win, where he had 6 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a forced fumble on one of those, 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. Just a remarkable game for one individual, especially a defensive end, 2 interceptions and all of that stuff. That was a game that cemented himself as, he's definitely going to be the next Bosa or Young, and then could never recapture that game, which nobody could. You should never expect to have 2 games like that. But two Buckeyes never got their gold pants, and that's something that you don't need to tell them about. But they do leave as national champions. Replacing those guys, boy, good luck with that. Now, what the Buckeyes do have are some veteran backups who are now looking to start. Kenyatta Jackson has been talked about as a leader of this room now. So that's one guy. That's the first guy. Caden Curry, he's actually a senior now, and he did not redshirt as a true freshman. Kenyatta Jackson did redshirt as a true freshman. So they're both 4th-year guys. Jackson, however, is a redshirt junior. Those are the top 2 candidates that are there to replace these 2 guys. Joshua Mickens is a redshirt sophomore. Did not play a ton. Dominic Kirks is a redshirt freshman. Did not play a ton last year. Those 2 guys combined for 32 snaps last year. And they need to step up. Now, what Larry Johnson did, who is back, by the way, Larry Johnson went into the portal, and grabbed Logan George from Idaho State, who as a redshirt sophomore last year posted 56 tackles, 18 and a half tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks, and six quarterback hurries as well. So he's a guy that they kind of need to step up and step in because of his age and his veteran presence as well. And then they brought in 2 true freshmen in Zion Grady and Epi Satanale, who, different kinds of bodies. Zion Grady's 6'4", 240, and Satanale's maybe like a 6'5", 225. We'll have to add some weight. So those are the names really to know and replacing. Oh, gosh, here's another name. CJ Hicks, who has moved from linebacker to defensive end, and as a senior now gives them another fourth-year guy who wants to play the position. He has made the move from linebacker to defensive end, where he's always felt more comfortable as a pass rusher, just point and shoot, basically just go get that ball, as opposed to a linebacker reading and reacting. He's always been better on the offensive rather than the defensive, and that's not a great thing for a linebacker, but it's a better thing for a pass rusher. So a guy that can go ahead and create some havoc. This spring, he's still learning the position. Larry Johnson's working with him. Talked with Larry Johnson recently, and he talked about the need, not just the pass rushing will be fine. It'll be there. They need to get CJ Hicks up to speed on defending the run from the defensive end spot. So that's something they're working with him on this spring to be able to handle that. Now he's got to get a little bit bigger as well. He's listed at 6'3", 233 last year. Maybe another 10, 15 pounds by the time the season starts. So they'll want to get that work there. Just get him accustomed to being closer to the ball, and then also closer to the tackles and the offensive linemen who are trying to keep you from the ball. So those are the guys. Those are your candidates to replace Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. And this spring is going to be Matt Patricia, the new defensive coordinator, working hand in hand with Larry Johnson on all of these different things that these guys can do. And James Laurinaitis said it last week that when they hired Matt Patricia, the first guy he thought of was CJ Hicks, because Matt Patricia is known for, and Bill Belichick is known at New England for putting guys in spots that they take what they do best and they say, okay, you're going to do that here. We don't want you doing this because you don't do that very well, but you're very good at this. So we're going to focus on this with you. And so moving him to that, to the defensive end spot, the ability to use his speed and his quickness there, I think is going to be very interesting to watch. His move and the addition of Logan George makes this a much deeper group than initially what things were looking like, because when you just have Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson, sure, it's great that they're fourth-year guys, but the production, you don't know what you're going to get out of those guys necessarily until you see them do it for 40, 45 snaps. And then adding Logan George and CJ Hicks, now those guys aren't just playing by default. Everybody's playing and competing and pushing each other. So Larry Johnson has options this year, which is always better than the alternative. So in terms of the best bets, Kenyatta Jackson, talking to his former teammates at the NFL Combine, they're mentioning him as a defensive line leader. Ty Hamilton talked about it. Others have talked about how he has embraced that role as the defensive guy, the defensive line guy, and somebody needed to, because you lost all 4 of your starters. So he stepped up there. And if he's stepping up as a leader, you would expect that will also lead to showing up on the field in terms of his play and his production. Caden Curry, I know a lot of people like him. He's going to be in the mix, certainly. We'll see what Logan George can do at Idaho State. He was mainly in a 3-man front, and so he wasn't necessarily just dealing with offensive tackles. He was battling inside. He's 6'5", 260 pound, like a good-sized defensive end, but was battling a lot of interior offensive linemen at Idaho State. Here at Ohio State, probably gets an opportunity to battle just tight ends and offensive tackles more, which will be good for him. And then, this spring, as we've said on all of these shows, is about getting the young guys some work. Dominic Kirks and Joshua Mickens will need that work. CJ Hicks will get it as well. But this is going to be a Kenyatta Jackson-led defensive front. And if they can get other guys to follow along, CJ Hicks, don't forget, he was a leader of the 2021 recruiting class. So now that he's in a spot where he can start to thrive, if he can thrive, then he's also going to be a fantastic leader as well. So what looked like a position of concern could be a position of strength, but there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered over the course of not just spring, but even beyond that in terms of the summer and then in fall camp. But there are some possibilities here that the Ohio State defensive ends can be pretty good again this year, just as they were last year. So there you go. There's your defensive ends. That's how Ohio State is going to replace Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. If you can give us a thumbs up, we would appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. Hit the bell to be notified because, again, spring ball is right around the corner. So we're going to be dropping a bunch of videos from the Woody, from live shows, podcast updates, and all of those things. So we're also at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Don't forget, sign up now, $4.99 for your first month, talking about what we're hearing and seeing, insider intel and things like that. You can find that at the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.